be the new boys in town.
What's that sound? Is someone moving around?
Sit down for a spell. You don't look so well.
Wait a minute, I feel great. You just leave yourself to wait. You might as well just hang around.
It's to the head. We got to operate. Just like relax. It's a house of wax. Oh, I remember Frankenstein. Shivers on my spine.
I'm forgetting how to feel.
Fish out my tears. Look up to the cellar down below. Trouble is bubbling in the room. And we have a Mr. Spice will give you good advice. He'll know what to do. You just let him go. He will put the voodoo in the stew and tell you. It's like a movie. It's a big movie show. It's like a movie. It's a
Happy Halloween, boys and ghouls. I'm your host with the most, Henry R. Mockingbird.
I'm Gary.
We have a ghoulishly good horror comedy for our first Halloween episode. Today, me and Gary are going to review Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. So, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein is about Larry Tobbit, aka the Wolfman, played by Lon Chaney Jr., who gives a call to Abbott and Costello, who are a couple of baggage handlers, warning them about 2 crates that they're going to get to McDoodle's House of Horrors. Here's some tips for surviving a horror movie. If somebody tells you not to go somewhere, or otherwise, frankly, you're doomed, well, that means that the plot is not going to end well for you. Costello is boyfriend and girlfriend with Sandra. For whatever reason, we really don't know. But then we learn that she is working for Dracula, and she has chosen Costello's simple, pliable brain to put into the monster's head because, as Dracula puts it, he's become a vicious, unmanageable brute. Okay, it's time for me to spoil the ending, so I better hop to it. But if you haven't seen any of the movie, skip this part of the video if you want the movie unspoiled. It all comes to a spectacular ending with Frankenstein chasing Abbott and Costello, Dracula fighting the Wolfman, and both Dracula and the Wolfman drowning, and the Frankenstein monster burning to a crisp. And here we come to my favorite scene of the movie.
Well, he won't chase us anymore. And another thing, Mr. Chickian, the next time that I tell you that I saw something when I saw it, you believe me that I saw it. Oh, relax. Now that we've seen the last of Dracula, the Wolfman and the monster, there's nobody to break us anymore.
Oh, that's too bad. I was hoping to get in on the excitement.
Who said that?
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm the Invisible Man.
What do I think? Well, I'll tell you. I think Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein is the best horror comedy ever made, and is my personal favorite Abbott and Costello movie. In case you didn't know, I'm a huge fan of Abbott and Costello. I should probably give the backstory out of the way. Both Abbott and Costello had the idea when they saw Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. They decided to do a Broadway play starring Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. But because they couldn't spare the time to devote to a Broadway play, the idea was dropped. The idea was kicking around the studio lot for quite some time. It wasn't until Robert Arthur had the idea, why don't we put both Abbott and Costello and the monsters together? The original title was Brain of Frankenstein, but because the distributors thought it sounded like a straight-up horror movie, they changed it. Animation where Dracula turns into a bat and the intro was done by Walter Lantz.
Everybody thinks I'm crazy. Yes, sirree, that's me, that's me. That's what I'm cracked up to be. I chop a hole in every tree. Knock on wood. Oh, well, knock on the wood. So I'm crazy, so what can I do? So are you.
The actors making Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein were clearly having fun making the movie, so much so that they actually brought comedians on set. One of the comedians was Bobby Barber, who would later go on to appear in the Abbott and Costello show. Even some of the actors brought their kids to work. I think Abbott and Costello's choreography is spooktastic and ghoulful. This is one of my favorite Abbott and Costello movies, and they do give off a few good funny lines here and there, and plenty of classic Abbott and Costello routines. One of my favorite lines was this one.
Sunset, and if Dracula is here, he's going to be wanting breakfast, and I'm fatter than you, and it ain't going to be me. Just a minute, it ain't going to be me.
Playing Frankenstein is Glenn Strange, a very creepy name. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein was the third time he played Frankenstein, the first time being House of Frankenstein, and the second time being House of Dracula. I bet a lot of you are wondering why I'm calling him Frankenstein. I do know that a lot of people like to argue that that's not his name, that the doctor's name was Frankenstein, but I like to think the doctor called him after his last name.
He better take those neck bolts out. He look like he have a headache. Too bad Damon is not in this movie, or he be going home to his dad.
Universal really wanted to get Boris Karloff into the role, but ever since Son of Frankenstein, he had pretty much retired from the role, so he declined. Dracula is played by Bela Lugosi, who first originated the role in 1931's Dracula. Funny enough, even though he played other vampires and other vampire-type characters, he only played Dracula twice, the first time being the original Dracula in 1931, and the second time being in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Another person considered for the role of Dracula in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein was Ian Keith, who was also considered for the role of the original Dracula. Lon Chaney Jr. gives a howling performance as both Larry Tubbett and the Wolfman. You may remember him from my last review. Sandra is manipulative and cunning. She is able to manipulative Costello whenever she can. She kinda does look like a vampire, though.
Are you sure she's not a vampire?
Sandra is played by Lauren Aubert, who was also in another Abbott and Costello Meet movie, Abbott and Costello Meet the Killer, starring Boris Karloff. Playing McDoodle is Frank Ferguson, who is also in The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Joan Raymond, an insurance lady, is played by Jane Randolph, who was also in Cat People and The Curse of Cat People. Playing the Invisible Man at the end of the movie was Vincent Price, who also played the Invisible Man in The Invisible Man Returns. That's pretty much all I have to say about Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. But until next time, happy Halloween! I give the film 5 stars.
This is weird.
It's much worse than I feared. I'll close my eyes and make it disappear.
This is strange. It ain't home of the range.
You just tell me that you got no feet.
There goes the sun. Here comes the night. Somebody turn on the light. Somebody tell me that fate has been kind.
You can go on, you are out of the night. It's like a movie. It's a big movie show. It's like a movie. It's a big movie show.
Do not forget to comment down below, push like, and subscribe, and ring bell for new contact. If you'd like to request an old school movie on this show, please do so by requesting it in the comments.